All right, good afternoon. Nice to see that some people have still managed to stay here in the theater. And thank you very much for attending our presentation. Apologies for being late. The previous guy went on for 15 minutes longer than he was supposed to, so he made life a little bit difficult for us, but that's okay. So, I'm Thomas, I'm from Remedy. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague Greg, who's also from Remedy. And we're going to talk about basically the making of Quantum Break, which we shipped on April 5th, so something like five weeks ago on Xbox One and Windows 10. A bit about, well, Greg, you want to give a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm senior narrative designer at Remedy, and a narrative designer basically is a game developer that really cares about the story. I like to write. I'm a writer, but also I'm a developer. I started as a more into visual effects, moved into level design, and then I moved to be the conduit between the writing team and all other developers. But background-wise, before Remedy, I did work in film, so I started working in Sydney. I'm Australian, not Finnish, as you probably guessed. I worked in Sydney on some animated movies. I worked on Happy Feet 2 and Legend of the Guardians, and then I moved to visual effects, and I worked on Sucker Punch. And then I moved over to London. I didn't come straight across from Australia to Finland. I worked on Prometheus, World War Z, and Gravity. I kind of worked on all the biggest films I really wanted to work on. I was always interested in games, and Remedy to me is one of the best storytelling companies in the world. So when I got the chance to join the team, I joined, and the rest is history, and really proud of Quantum Break and hoping we can tell you how it was made.
I'm not nearly as interesting. I worked as a game journalist for a very, very, very long time, and then I worked in middleware before I joined Remedy. And we're not here to talk about ourselves, but we just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective because we come from, different sort of backgrounds, and we do very different things, or did very different things on Quantum Break. But really, it's been the company and the game that has brought us together and here today. But let's get going. I think is it trailer time? Let me click the slide. And yes, let's roll the trailer, please.
The number one killer is time. It destroys us all. When Paul came back, he took away the only person who could stop the end of time. My brother, Will. The thing is, when time broke and changed Paul, it changed me too.
So that's how the game looks. That trailer is from 2015. So we're going to talk about what it was like to make a blockbuster. It was a very sort of conscious decision after Alan Wake that we wanted something that's a little bit more lighthearted and I guess also a little bit more commercial. But as we're going to talk about, that doesn't mean you have to dumb things down. So, at its core, just so you know, Quantum Break is a story-driven third-person cinematic action game. That is what we do at Remedy. And what was really unique about Quantum Break is that it actually has a full in-game live action show. There's 4 episodes inside the game, and the players actually get to shape what happens in the story. So you impact the story of the game as well as the live action, which are both tied together. And you do that through junctions, and Greg's going to talk more about them. Now, the structure of the game seemed to be quite confusing or a difficult thing to explain, but really you play through an act of the game. Then you get to the junction moment where you have to make a decision, and after that you get to watch a full live action episode with really, really high production values. But more about that later. So a little bit about Remedy. So at its height, we were at 130 people on Quantum Break. So we were over double the size compared to Alan Wake. That already was very, very difficult. We have a lot of people who worked on Max Payne, and they were used to the good old times of like 15 people. And we went to like 130 during QB, and that already brings a lot of challenges. Just from communication is already difficult. There's lots of different disciplines. It just requires a lot of coordination, a lot of discussion, and that is challenging. But on top of that, we were working on a new platform, Xbox One, so we had to do a lot of work on our Northlight engine to bring it up to speed. Luckily, we had lots of excellent Swedish engineers to help us out at Remedy. Yeah, Otto, there you go. And it was a brand new IP. The gameplay mechanics were quite different than what we have done before. There was interactive narrative. We had to do new character technology. We got to work with Hollywood actors. That's a challenge in itself. And then we had the live action show, and all of this had to tie together. And of course, it was also a time travel story, which are pretty notorious for having loopholes and not making a whole lot of sense. So things were challenging, to say the least. So Greg's going to take over and talk about the 3 pillars of time travel.
So yeah, we figured now that you know what the game is, we'd actually... Oh, cheers.
Let's do the swap.
All right. So now that you know what the game is, I figured I'd go through the original design philosophies we had with Quantum Break. So what you see is the final product, and obviously we went through a lot of challenge to make it, but how did we get there? So let's go pillar by pillar, and we'll show a video up ahead. So the first pillar we wanted to do was time-amplified gameplay. Basically, one of the core things we wanted to do was we knew we wanted to do a time travel game, and at Remedy, we like to blend the narrative with the gameplay. So from that point, if in Alan Wake you fought with light, in Quantum Break you fight with time. So we wanted to go for there, just to make it unique and special. So what we're going to show next is actually one of the first prototypes of Quantum Break that we haven't released publicly. So let's kick it off and have a look at the first prototype. And it's actually done by Rekko, who's in the crowd. So. So as you can see, when we first started Quantum Break, it was a very, very different game. In saying that, that mechanic is brilliant, and I think in other games it would have worked perfectly. But for us, when we were developing the game, we went through so many prototypes, like all developers. And the key thing that actually connected us and wanted to move on was this philosophy that we have at the bottom here. Time turn things up, not back. The other key thing that Thomas also elaborated was that we wanted to create a big game. We wanted to create an action blockbuster that we love to watch. So basically, we did lots of prototypes, and the final game you could see in that trailer, it's a time-amplified, very fast action combat experience. And basically, the other key thing we wanted at Remedy was, like all storytellers and all developers, we wanted to be better. We wanted more gameplay variation. We wanted deeper mechanics. And with Quantum Break, in Alan Wake, you had the torch and a few weapons. We've got different time powers. We've got upgrade systems. So we've really tried to up our game and achieve this pillar of time-amplified gameplay. The second key thing, which is the first time we've experimented with it, was interactive narrative. So Remedy's always told great stories, and I think we've told another one with Quantum Break. But another key pillar we wanted to do was we wanted to do a story that you could adapt and change. And I'll go more into that, but basically the key thing we wanted to do was we wanted one story told in many ways. We have a specific beginning that we want the story to have, and we have a specific meaning for it that we want it to have as well. So with that, we don't mind if along the way the player can change it and they can adapt their story. So with that, we basically created junctions, which I'll go into further detail, and this was the way that we achieved this pillar. One interesting thing, if you have played the game, is that the junctions currently take place in the current and they affect the future. But in the earliest version of Quantum Break, like the gameplay mechanic, the junctions actually took place in the past. So you time travel back, you do something in the past, and then like most time travel stories, you'd see it evolve. But we actually decided that we wanted the show and the game to connect, which we'll go into more ahead, so we moved it into the future. So the final pillar was a time travel story. So as you can see on the right here, these aren't typical time travel pictures. We don't have Back to the Future. Terminator is a good reference, but we don't have it. We have Inception, we have Fight Club, we have Collateral. We wanted to create like a modern techno thriller. We didn't want to create a time travel movie like other ones. We also didn't want to create a time travel story with dinosaurs. We didn't want to have a game where you go back in time and kill Hitler and do anything cliche. We wanted to do something fresh that hasn't been done before, and this led into the key pillar of more Back to the Future and Terminator and less Primer. But another thing that Thomas said that when we were developing the story was that even though they're simpler time travel stories, simplifying things doesn't mean dumbing it down. We always wanted it to be complex, but we just wanted it to be smart and entertaining as well. So these were the three pillars. We wanted time-amplified gameplay, interactive narrative, and we wanted a time travel story that hasn't really been done before. So now as a narrative designer, I'll go into the evolution of the story and where we were and what we became. So from the get-go, we knew we wanted to tell a story about Jack, Will, and Paul. We wanted to tell the story of a triangle, two brothers, and one friend. And basically, we have three key philosophies that we have up here. We wanted this idea of mending a broken family. We wanted the ideas of best friends turn mortal enemies. And finally, we wanted a clash of philosophy. And these core things were the main parts of the story we wanted to have. Time travel went into this and blended with it, but this was the key thing that we wanted the story to tell. And the interesting thing you can see up there as well was that we originally had 4 playable characters, but when we came down to it, we decided that Quantum Break, even though it's called Quantum Break and it's not Max Payne and it's not Alan Wake about a single character, we have an ensemble of characters, but we decided that having more of a focus on Jack Joyce allowed us to achieve these goals of about mending a broken family. Playing someone who has a brother that you don't play actually made it a better experience. Having a best friend that you're only playing as the character, it worked. The one thing that did survive this, which is really cool, is in the junctions you get to play the villain. So we've actually kept one of the extra playable characters, but overall when we were developing the story, we wanted a really focused and driven perspective. So, now junctions. So, junctions are a really interesting thing in Quantum Break, and it's something that I worked a lot on. And basically, they allow you to shape the story. So as we said, there was a core pillar that we wanted to tell a story that you can change. And when we had this challenge, the next thing that came in, we had original playable characters. We thought, well, in most games, you never get to play the villain. So why don't you play the villain? And when you play the villain, like anything, you actually begin to understand them, and maybe they're not really a villain after all. And I think like all good Remedy games, they don't just ask you to listen and understand, they ask you to think. So as you're playing the game, you're probably thinking, is Paul Serene the bad guy? And I think, once again, it's a clash of philosophies. Depending on where you stand, you may believe that he's the good guy. The other cool thing was that we have this really great live-action show. So we're not like a normal game. We have the game, and we have a live-action show that combines into the experiences. But one of the key things, is the title of this speech, is that basically the game is about the heroes and the show is about the villains. So upon that, we wanted it to go from the hero and then straight to the villains. We decided, well, if you're going to play the villain, you'll get to understand the villains more, so it'll be an easier blend into the live-action experience. And finally, we do a lot of things, and I think we haven't really elaborated in public, but since we're a making of, I figured I'd kind of show you the stuff that we're changing in the game. We're changing the voiceover, so depending on your choices, you'll get a different NPC. Depending on your choices, you'll get different cinematics. Environmental storytelling will change. Frozen scenes, we have these amazing scenes where the world freezes with a stutter. Depending on your choice, these actually adapt and they change. Optional storytelling, that's one thing I'll go into further. It's something that's the first time we've done it at Remedy. The actual emails change based on your decisions. You have 4 decision points, and instantly the emails adapt to your experience. And a lot of these are very subtle, but the moment that you play Quantum Break the second time is the moment that you'll see the complexity. And finally, one of the coolest things that I really like is the radios. So we've always had radios in Remedy games, and this time, because we have junctions, the idea came up with, well, if you're making a decision as the boss of a big evil corporation, which is Paul Serene, and you have to kind of manipulate the media, it'd be cool if you could change the radio host who's in Riverport, the city in the game. So basically, based on your choice, you'll get either a radio host who's very positive about Monarch, or you'll get a radio host who's very negative, and as a result, the music changes as well, so the entire ambience of the experience when you're playing adapts. And briefly, to jump into show changes before Thomas covers it, we do have an alternate opening to the show based on your immediate decision, and there is an alternate ending, so not just the game changes, but also the show. We'll give you the specifics of the variations ahead, but it's quite vast, and it was very challenging for us to create. Last but not least, I think more insight into development. The junctions were developed in the last 12 months. It was a very quick procedure, and the reason we did that was we wanted the show to be done. We wanted this to be the bridge, and we kept the show until late as possible, which we'll go into more detail. And we also wanted to balance the scope. Obviously, creating one game is hard enough. Creating a game with lots of different things that change is even harder. And we wanted to obviously make the game we wanted to make first and then find out ways we could change it and adapt it throughout. And I'm really proud of what we did, and I think it does create this adaptive story. So, Thomas, on to you with the cast.
Yes, do the swap again, so dramatic, thank you. So we had a really great cast for the game, which was awesome, and the three key players you can see here. So on the left, it's Sean Ashmore. You might know him from the X-Men movies. So he ended up playing Jack Joyce, our hero, and then Dominic Monaghan. They're actually good friends in real life. Plays Jack's brother William. And then Mr. Paul Serene is played by Aidan Gillen, who just came back in the Game of Thrones. Sorry if I spoiled that for somebody. But we had a really awesome cast. It was challenging, but especially we worked a lot with Sean, and he's a big gamer, and he was really into the project and became really good friends with a lot of the team. So, but he was not there since the beginning. Now, when we announced this game, 2012, when the Xbox, 2013, 2012, I get it confused. When the Xbox One was announced, at that point we had the idea for the game that it's going to be the time travel story and all that, but we had very little details at that point, but a little bit more about that later. So when we were working on the prototype back in 2011, 2012, you obviously need somebody to work with for the lead character. So back then in the prototype it was played by Gethin Anthony, who turns out is Renly from Game of Thrones. Now that prototype has never been shown publicly. But then when we went into pre-production, our Jack was played by Sean Dury. So he was Jack Joyce in the 2014 Gamescom trailer of the game. But in the end we shipped with Sean Ashmore playing Jack Joyce. And Ashmore was sort of our number one choice, and then he became available, so we got him. But it was definitely confusing for people out there that the actor kept changing. But luckily we were able to keep Sean Dury in the game. If you've played it, he's Nick, the cab driver, with I think the best lines in the game.
Definitely.
And we had a great additional cast as well. You saw from the trailer we had Lance Reddick, who's done a lot of work in games like Destiny and a bunch of others, but he was also in Fringe, The Wire as well, and then Patrick Hoisinger, Courtney Hope, and plenty of others. And really it's not, it's nice to have the star power, but really it was about, availability was important, but also it's really about the performance, like what could they bring to the game and bring the characters to life. Then a couple of words about the live-action show that's in the game. We're going to watch the trailer first. All right, let's show the live-action trailer, please.
I've been to the past. I've tried to change things. Undo mistakes. Only to find there's no changing the inevitable. Time is just one closed loop. No matter what I do, you and I, we always end up here. And no matter what I do, time ends.
In everything you've seen, do I stop before you're dead?
Thank you. Yeah, we do like our guns. So there's 4 episodes of the show in the game, and that's only where it exists. But as Greg explained, you can actually impact the story. So there's actually 48 variations of those 4 episodes. Hence, we have to stream because it's a massive amount of content. Now, originally, the live action was always part of the original pitch of the game, but very early on, it was like a separate thing. So the storyline of the live action was completely separate from what actually happens in the game. And that was something that especially our creative director, Sam Lake, really didn't want. He really did want that, the experience is seamless, so the live action should really be involved with the game's story, and that's what we ended up shipping with. They're really, really closely tied together. You do something in the game that's reflected in the show. You see something in the show, later on you play the game like, wait a minute, didn't I see that? And then you can maybe interact with it and so on. So really the design philosophy was connection and crossover, and it might seem simple, but it was incredibly complicated. So the live action was made by an LA-based company called Lifeboat Productions, who are pretty experienced in making TV shows. And obviously they're in LA, we're in Espoo in Finland, and Remedy, and of course our publisher Microsoft is in Seattle, and it's this sort of holy triangle that had to get this thing done. And of course the live action side had strong views on how it should look and the flow of the show and all that. And we wanted, crossover characters, locations, and scenes. So, some characters are both in the show and in the game. There's locations that are in both the show and the game. So coordinating all of that was really, really difficult. So we shot the show in very early 2015, right?
Yep, 2015.
And in Atlanta. And at that point, really had to nail down the story and lock down everything that was the plan, but of course things still changed quite a lot, even though everything was filmed. But we did film the live action as late as possible, just to give us the best chance of really making sure the story and the show tie together. Now, of course, there's always creative differences, and we definitely, it was a challenge. Live action folks, they have a vision of how it should work, and we as developers have our vision, and we were able to come together. But making the game itself is really difficult, but then you add in the complexity of the show, which was a very, very big production. And that was definitely challenging, but and then the mishaps, well, that's the silly things that happen. So we sent, this white boxed version of our levels to the live action production company so they could see, in what sort of areas the game takes place and so on. Obviously, they saw tons of concept art and everything. But then we get the finished live action, raw footage to the Remedy office, and we're looking at so why is there a white boxed lamp in the live action? Because they literally thought that this untextured white lamp in the content we sent to them is something that should be in the live action. So you see this beautiful live action, then there's a blank white lamp there. It actually looks like it kind of should be there, but we were like, that's just why is that there? So you have had these weird things happen. They were funny, but also kind of stressful. And we ended up having to remodel quite a lot of the warehouse, for example, where second act starts.
Yeah, but overall, I think it says a lot about, even though there were the differences, I think together the show we made, it's so connected. We have pictures here. You can see 1-to-1 they built the Monarch HQ in CG. 1-to-1 they built the actual costume we designed in Finland. 1-to-1, we actually copied the CFR room that they made in Atlanta. We built it exactly in Quantum Break, so you can experience exactly the same location. So this whole philosophy really did come down to it. And there was, I think the other funny story was that Beth Wilder, played by Courtney Hope, we made the model. When she shot the show, she had an earring. One of our developers noticed. We modeled the earring to match it exactly. We wanted the blend of these two experiences to be perfect. And since we're the first ones to really try to do this, we wanted to do it right. So, it was amazingly challenging, but I think it says a lot about these mishaps that they just really wanted to be as close to the game as possible, which is cool.
Yeah, and it's in this day and age of YouTube and Twitch, you have to get those details right. So then, Greg's going to start talking a little bit more about what actually he did on Quantum Break. So let's do the swap
Quick
again.
swap.
There you go.
Okay. So now that we've gone into all those things, I figured I'd give you exact stuff that I did as a narrative designer on Quantum, and hopefully good advice for anyone who wants to make story games or make stories better in their games. So first things first, there was two things I did on Quantum Break that I think really helped the team, and as a narrative designer were critical. The first thing was, we're a time travel game. Time travel is a very hard thing to communicate to 130 people. So the first thing I actually did was I visualized it. As you can see at the top, spoilers if you haven't played the game, don't look too close, it actually shows where the characters go. So that way for the team, they knew exactly what costumes they should be wearing, what their state should be, all the way down to what levels were used and all these other things. It was critical. So I recommend if you're doing a time travel game or you're doing any complex story, you should visualize your story. Not everyone can read a screenplay. And in our case, our screenplays were massive because of the junction choices. And then you combine it with a live action show, it's a lot of information to go to a lot of people that are very busy. The second thing, which I think a lot of AAA developers are doing, but I just want to share it with you again and say that we're doing it as well and it's perfect, and if you're not, you should be, is doing a timeline. Basically, you can see here, this is the entire game of Quantum Break, and it's a way for me to actually look at the game, look at the gameplay variety, and look at the pacing. Pacing is the most important thing in a story, and I can look instantly at this chart, and I can see the issues. I can see we have too much combat in this level, we may have too much combat back-to-back in 2 levels, so we should have a story level. One interesting thing I found with this, one of the core things in Quantum Break in the story is that time is breaking down. And basically, you cause this fracture which goes across the game. When I visualize the stutters, you can see these yellow bars, I realized
I think you have that fancy laser pointer in that thing. Does it work? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, you can see this. This is cool. So basically, when I did that, I realized that we didn't have enough stutters in the game. If time is breaking down, it should go across the entire game. So having a way to visualize it really helped. It reveals issues. You can see so many things. You can see story highlights. If you aren't doing this, you should be, and it's a great tool. And if you don't have a narrative designer and you're a level designer, I recommend you do it for your team. It's critical if you want to tell a better story and have a better paced experience.
It was a good way for like when new people like me came on board, and then you talk to one of the writers and they start to explain the project. They're like, wait, what? So 1999 and then Beth does what? And you just walk to the 3rd floor and you stared at that thing for a while and all was crystal clear.
Yep. So first things first, I should go through the pictures. So in the bottom, that's the writing team at Remedy. That's Sam Lake on the left. He told me to use the Max Payne picture, so done. And then no, not all the writers have moustaches. That was taken during Movember. So and basically, there's Mickey in the middle, Tyler and Cam. Tyler and Cam moved on. Mickey worked on Alan Wake, along with Sam. So basically, to kick back onto the slides, so obviously we had good plans, we had great screenplays, we had interactive narrative. How do we actually pull off the game? And you pull off games with great tools and technology. And like I said, at Remedy, we have proprietary technology, like a lot of the Nordic developers. And our one's Northlight, and it was critical for the game that we made with Quantum Break. We have the World Editor, which is our editor, the way we place our animations, the way we placed our amazing VFX, the VFX team did, where we go through and script every detail that you play through the game, which is pretty simple if you know that. But 2 tools that are very cool that we have. We have the Dialogue Writer, which basically converts a TV and film quality screenplay and puts it into game data. We link the facial animation to every line, we link the VO, we link everything. And as a game developer as well, this is pretty much as a narrative designer, I lived in the WED, of course, placing and scripting the levels, but also just reading the screenplays and double checking and editing and tweaking. One of the other coolest things with this tool was the fact that you're probably thinking we have this great cast, and we mentioned it was challenging with the actors, but it was challenging because they're so good at their jobs that they're in demand. Aidan Gillen needs to shoot Game of Thrones. Sean Ashmore needs to shoot The Following. So basically, we needed a way to prototype, to iterate. So basically, with the tool, we could generate robo-voice, and we could instantly write a line, press a button, it would pop out, and we'd have the voice there, so we could script our levels and see the pacing, and it was critical. Finally, originally on Alan Wake, every single cinematic was scripted with delays and timers. In 3 seconds do this, in 4 seconds do that, blah, blah, blah. We stepped up our tool base. We now have a timeline editor, which is like Matinee and Unreal, and it's like Adobe Premiere or Sony Vegas. It basically, the reason why the cinematics in Quantum Break is so good are because of the tools. We actually add more detail and add so much more complexity than we ever have. And like anything, because we're in-house, the tools are getting better, so I can't wait to see what we pull off next. Whoops. So finally, another really cool thing that we did that I kicked off was the concept of a narrative review. So when you're reviewing your levels, you're probably thinking about the gameplay, the sound, everything else, sometimes but the story. And I recommend if you aren't doing it, if you have story in your game, you should just have a session where you focus on the story. I did this with the creator, director Sam, I did this with the writers, and we questioned every line. We moved the pace of every line, we delayed everything, we tweaked everything. We questioned everything in these meetings. And I think part of the reason why we have a time travel story, which it's been a really great compliment to us that people understand, is because of this. We really focused on the story in our games, and we will continue to. So the next thing I wanted to give some information about is the optional storytelling. It's been something that has had a lot of feedback because it's new in a Remedy game and there's been a lot of funny things that have come out of it. So I figured I'd explain how we did it and why we did it. So basically, the first reason why we did it was we have so much story, and we're a story company. Everyone's a storyteller at Remedy. We wanted more and more ways to do it, but we're also time travel. So we wanted to explain time travel complexities. We wanted to elaborate on the characters. We can't fit everything in the game. We wanted to connect it to the live action show. It was so simple that if we have Charlie Wincott in the show emailing another character from the show, it's an instant crossover and connection with the game. Junction impacts. The cheapest thing you can change in a game is words. So basically, if you do a decision, I choose PR or hardline, the first thing that we came up with was the first email you read is going to reflect that. So if you have any storytelling in your game that you want to twist and you don't have the budget, you should just change what you're writing. And if you have the VO facilities, change what people are saying. They're the two quickest things you can change as a developer. The other coolest thing was it allowed us to sprinkle humor and variety. Like Remedy has always put in funny videos and other funny things. We've actually got a screenplay inside the game called Time Knife, which has had this huge following online. There was a live reading, there's been videos, people have made t-shirts. It's this hilarious time travel story inspired by the time travel story we didn't tell in Quantum Break. We have this erotic audiobook that's really hidden and kind of quirky, and just having these moments that are off tone, it kind of builds to the realism of the world. Not everything is all very serious and science. There's humor in everything. So I think I was really proud that we managed to put these things in.
You might want to explain a little bit the image on the top right, which is actually the first level of the game and the kind of the critical path and all the things you can find.
Yeah, so basically we finished Quantum Break. Oh, sorry, we hadn't finished Quantum Break. When we had the levels in a state that was ready, I went through every single level and I figured out what stories we could tell. Obviously, that's copyright. I just used it to show that's a TV you can watch. But basically, I planned with the writing team where all the optional storytelling is. And once I had this, I communicated with the writers, and the writers wrote, and then I basically reviewed it, worked on it with them, and usually I demand change. I was usually like, can we add junction stuff to this? This is a cool email, but it'd be cooler if we connected to the show. Like, how can we add more detail? Like, we have a plot hole here, can we fill that? So it was a really cool thing, but this is kind of a making of, and down the bottom's Time Knife. But let's kick on. So basically, I'm going to wrap up my stuff on narrative design, and then Thomas is going to jump into the more marketing, the PR side of the project. But I figured now that you have a brief insight into what I did on Quantum Break, I'd kind of pass on what I've learned from Quantum Break. So I kind of broke this down into quotes and other things, and I hope it inspires you to tell better stories as well. And it's things I'm going to be taking to heart and pushing for again and again ahead. The first thing, I have two references that aren't Remedy, but they're two great games nonetheless. I have Uncharted 2 and Half-Life 2, and always aim for activity, not passiveness. I think as a narrative designer, you'd probably expect that I say do cinematics, and I'd say no. I think in film, there's this really cool thing where you say, like, show, don't tell. The best films show, don't tell. And in games, I think the best games allow you to play, don't watch. So basically, if you can find ways to have a really great moment that's interactive, as a designer, as a programmer, as anyone, you're making a better story, and you're making something that's more suited to the interactive medium. So, like I said, always aim for activity, not passiveness. The second thing, and once again, two contemporary examples, and obviously we do it at Remedy as well. I talked about adaptive storytelling a lot, where you have a fixed beginning and you have a fixed end, but you should find a way for it to adapt along the way. Just recently, there was Firewatch, which at the beginning, it allows you to adapt the experience that you have. And then even in Uncharted 4 that just came out, they have adaptive cinematics that you can tweak. They don't change the story, but they allow you to engage with the story. Hence, you can connect with the story even more. So if you aren't doing adaptive storytelling, you should be doing adaptive storytelling. It's easy, and it is going to make your story better. The next thing, this is something that I learned from Quantum Break directly, is I've got Sergei Eisenstein at the top, the guy who invented editing and montage. And basically, I think in games, you spend so much time rushing to finish things that you don't actually ever step back to review it and actually think about it. There's a great quote by Ernest Hemingway, which is, the difference between a great writer and a good writer is a great writer never shows you his good stuff, which basically means he's cut out all the stuff that isn't great. So if you find when you're making a game that there's features that aren't as good as they should be, or there's things that you think are weighing down the game, they probably are. And I think it's a good experience to take in when you're making a game. This is a quote that I really like, and it's something that I found when I was developing Quantum Break. It's by Jean-Luc Godard, the great French filmmaker. It's not where you take things from, it's where you take things to. So it's similar to Picasso. He said, art is theft. good artists copy, great artists steal. If you're inspired by something great, always try to be something greater. It's something that we really tried with Quantum Break. We wanted to do something that was innovative. We didn't want to do the same type of time travel story that you've done before, but we wanted to do a time travel story. So I think as creators, we should always push, and that's something that I'm really trying to do. And last but not least, I have Claude Monet in the background because he's one of the greatest innovators of art, and I think just a great example is innovate. Like, I think that's the thing I'm really proud of and why I work at Remedy, is that we do innovative games. We do games that other people won't do, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. So doing a game with a live action show is crazy, but I'm really proud that we did, and we've done something that other people haven't really tried to do at all. So always collaborate, find people that are good for you, and reinvent. So don't just create the same game, create a new game. All right, so let's do the switch, and Thomas is going to tell you about PR and marketing.
All right, far less exciting. Thanks, Greg. So the interesting thing, I mean, this was a great project to work on. So as I used to be a game journalist for something like 12 years, I remember when I went to different kind of events, and they're like, okay, here's a producer from the publisher. Do you want to interview him or her? I was like, no. And because, you want to talk to the actual creators. So that's what I faced when I went around the world to talk about Quantum Break. It's like, well, he's the PR guy. It's like, no, I don't want to talk to him. So that was kind of ironic, because I do know the game inside out, and like pretty much everybody at Remedy works on various aspects of the game. Which
Thomas constantly gave feedback throughout the project that really did tweak and make it better. So I think that's the thing. Everyone at Remedy is a storyteller, and we really are all developers. We're a very small team for the ambition that we have, and yeah, definitely.
Right. So the challenges was, and I do think this is quite interesting, is like the game was announced very early on in 2013, which sort of has become a Remedy tradition. Announced early, ship a lot later. That has problems. And when we showed this in 2013, there was also a live action trailer that was shown, which was kind of like a proof of concept that Microsoft did. It didn't have anything really to do with the story. We were still working on the story, but when audiences see that, they already immediately start to put things together in their heads and start to the project starts to take shape, even though we don't exactly know what it is. So we said that there's going to be a live action thing. People were very confused. We talked about it in very sort of high level terms. People were like, oh, it's probably going to be on Netflix or some Microsoft network. And no, that was never the plan. It was always going to be part of the game, but in what ways we didn't quite know. So that made it confusing. We announced in 2013, then we go quiet in 2014, 2015, and the problem is that when it seems that you're taking long, but making games these days, really AAA takes 3-4 years at this point, but people start thinking that something's wrong, that the project is in trouble. It wasn't really, we were just like figuring it all out. And of course, it didn't help that we changed the main character. So it was like, okay, like why did they do that? Is the project in trouble? Like, is the tone changing? Have they reshot everything? The budget must be hundreds of millions. No, nothing like that happened. But none of this helped. So in 2015, finally, when we really started to talk about the game, we're just like, let's keep it as simple as possible. Really, it's a third-person cinematic action game with an in-game live action show. The game is about the heroes, the show is about the villains. Like, really, you play the game to understand the heroes, and then you watch the show to see what the bad folks are up to, and are they that bad? And really important was, like, I mean, this is what I asked, if you're in the Kojima Q&A in the morning, I asked him, like, do single-player story-driven games have a future? Obviously, we at Remedy like to think they do, and we have lots of ideas for the future, but it was very critical, especially for the retail side, to know that this is a game that does have replay value, because the immediate thinking is like, okay, it's a short story-driven game, like I can just rent it or take it immediately back to the store, and these are things that are not necessarily very good for business. So definitely the fact that we have the junctions, you can do different things in the game, you can impact the story. We really wanted to get that across to people. That was really important, that Greg can play through one way, I play through one way, and then we talk, okay, Amy did this, and you're like, wait, like, no, Amy died, like, I don't have Amy in my game. So there's definitely a lot of replay value, at least we think, for like a story-driven game. So we started to turn the tide in the fall of last year. We really started talking about the game and trying to sort of tell people what it's about. So Edge did an awesome piece on us. Thank you very much for them. And then we got into also Game Informer, which is American Games magazine. And what you might probably not know is their circulation is about 8 million. They are, I think, United States' third largest magazine. Variety, Rolling Stone, GQ combined don't even come close. They're massive. So getting on their cover is a very, very big thing. So here, let me actually use the laser pointer thing. So creating this took something like 4 weeks. It's a combination of our concept artist, character artist, creative director, me, even Greg, discussing like what do we want to show when so many people will see it. So an important thing, that all the evil, all-seeing eye monarch is always lurking in the background. That was important to get there, as well as the stutter. This is what it looks like when time breaks down. And then, of course, Jack Choice is using his time powers, a big part of the game. And then you have the Monarch soldiers. So a lot of thought actually goes into images like this that we try to convey what the game is about, what the experience is about. And that might not immediately be obvious when you look at it and you've played the game. It probably makes a lot more sense. So the other challenge is, of course, like when a new IP, we're not a sequel, and when you bring something like that to the market, well, first of all, it's expensive making AAA, even though us Finns tend to be very, very frugal, but you still have to spend a lot of money on marketing, but at least in our business, if you spend the money right, you can still kind of like generate a hit, but it does take a lot of money. And sequels are known, so you have to explain less. So some of the challenges were that, first of all, the flow of the game was confusing to a lot of people. I'm sure people in the audience are kind of confused. So what exactly is the live action show in this game? What do I do? Go buy the game. That's a very good way to find out. And the struggle is, so when you're a sequel, like when you're like an Uncharted 3 or 4, like we all know it's going to kick ass. They have to show like one trailer and we're all sold. But in our case, you have to sell to people. You have to sell to the audience. You have to let them know what kind of game it is. And when it is a single-player game, when it is a story-driven game, there is only so much we can show because we don't want to ruin the story. But if you show something from a very late part of the game, it won't make any sense. And because we're not a systemic game, we're not really about systems like something like Destiny. So that made demoing the game surprisingly challenging. We couldn't have like a new demo every 6 months, so that was kind of difficult. As was the whole streaming and downloading the show, but I'm not gonna get into that. And then moving on to reception. I don't mean you go out and there's a reception. I don't think there's anything out there, so you have to stay here. So we spent a long time making this game, and it was a little bit confusing to folks out there. So when we finally put it out on April 5th, what actually was the reaction to all the years and years of work people at Remedy put into the game? I think this is probably our favorite, Greg.
Yeah, by far. I remember when we saw this, everyone on the team, it was just an email that went around, and throughout development, I talked to a lot of developers. They're always like, so you're doing a time travel game, which I wouldn't do. You're doing a game with actors that are probably never available. You're doing a game with interactive narrative. You're doing a game with the craziest VFX I've ever seen. You're doing a game with this and that and that and that. And they're like, you're not going to pull it off. And we did. We made the game. It was a challenge, and this quote really sums it up.
Yeah, and I think us Finns quite like the whole crazy fools thing. But in all honesty, just like Alan Wake, this Quantum Break ended up being quite divisive. So Yahoo mentioned the game's hero sort of lurches around like a tranquilized bear. I kind of find that funny. And then the live action was definitely an acquired taste. Like a lot of people when they played and watch it, like, okay, like I get it, it makes sense, like it actually has good production values, which is like, yeah, we didn't shoot it at Remedy's backyard, we've moved on since Max Payne and Death Rally, but a lot of folks liked it. They liked the combat, they especially liked the time powers, which we spent a lot of time figuring out. And a lot of people thought it was like a genuinely new experience. But I think that the main thing is like it's as long as there's discussion and valid criticism, like that's great. You're never ever going to please everybody, and I think, I personally always think that some of the best developers I met are the ones that are very realistic about their work, and they don't always think what they do is like a 10 out of 10. You have to be honest about what you were able to achieve. So, some marketing hype from Aaron from Xbox Games Marketing. We ended up getting Metacritic 77. Now, as a former journalist, I kind of even hate bringing up Metacritic because it's not the sort of it's not the key thing, but it's easy to go there and then look how the game has done. Would we have liked a better score? Of course, but we got a lot of love. We got a lot of great reviews. We got a lot of good criticism on what we could have done better and differently. And there's always, literally you have to take the game away from our hands because, you have to ship at some point, but we could keep working on it for, years and years, I think.
I think as well, just props to Sweden, like IGN gave us a 10, and as a developer, I don't think the game's a 10, but the fact that people passionately really love
Do you mean it's 11?
No. I'm just saying, but we did get such extreme reactions. We got a 10 out of 10, and then we got a 4 out of 10. And obviously, I think like anything, if you do anything that causes a response like that, you've done something special. It means that it's caused a passionate response, which is, I think, what you should always be aiming for. If you're aiming to innovate, some people don't want to innovate. They don't want things to change. They want it to stay the same. So I think that's the way a lot of the team have looked at it. And Metacritic's one way to average out the number, but in the end, if you look, it's 90% positive and 10% negative. But when you average it pops out.
I'm Finnish, so I always tend to only look at the negative, but that's just me. Right, what's next? Well, we definitely want to, if you have questions, now is the time. We'd love to answer any questions you have on Quantum Break. Hopefully we're able to get something out of this presentation. So if you have any questions, then please go ahead. Just raise your hand. Gentleman in the semi-middle. They will bring you a microphone. We want to hear your impressive voice.
Hello. It sounds like you recreated a lot of the same environments, both in real life and in the game. And there was a lot of complications by using or recording live action. And I guess the obvious question is, couldn't the same have been done with in-game cinematics, which it appears you also used? Why was the choice to do live action when you could have done motion capture and captured amazing performances as well? It sounds like.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this. I think the big thing is, and the key thing we wanted to have is, we wanted to give two different experiences. The show isn't a cinematic; it's a live action show. It's basically combining a live action show with a game. We didn't want to create elongated cinematics. That wasn't the mindset. The mindset was two different mediums merged together. I think there's a question a lot of people say that one day they think that movies and games are going to connect and cross over. And I think it's interesting because in this case it was a game and a TV show. We always wanted to create a TV show that you could direct. Microsoft gave us the opportunity to actually create a TV show, and our immediate reaction as game developers was, well, what if you could direct a Hollywood TV show and it would connect with your experience that you're playing in a game? So I guess that should answer your question. It wasn't the fact that we wanted to do cinematics. We wanted to do a TV show, a live action show.
In the back over there.
Hi. I have a ton of questions, but since the time's limited, I'm just going to pick
the best
one.
one.
So towards the end of the game, I kind of got the feeling that the production was a bit rushed. Did you actually make the game in a chronological order, though? In case of, because there's time travel, it's a bit hard to think if that's a valid question. But anyway, in terms of the order of the narrative, was the end part of the game an end part of the production as well?
It's a good question. Basically, no. As you probably noticed with our demos that we have, and if you've played the game, they jump all over. And we obviously, whenever we wanted to demo the game, we had to be very critical of what levels we were going to show and what levels we weren't going to show. But the entire time, we iterated the screenplay constantly. The end of the game it's another thing that I think is divisive and it's interesting. I think when you create interactive narrative, there's this idea that you should have an alternate ending, which is a common thing that's popped up where people say, well, the entire time you take my decisions and then I expect a different ending. In Quantum Break, we have a twist with that. I won't spoil it. But no, the entire time everything was planned the same way. The time travel levels, to be honest, did take a bit more because we really wanted to nail the things, and production-wise we had a bit more time, but I won't talk about what these levels are in case people haven't played, but in general it was all equally matched.
Anybody else? Are we out of time? Oh, I see, I understood your hand signal, nice. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody. It was the last presentation of today, so thanks very much for sticking here and checking us out. So on Greg's behalf, thanks very much. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time.